On a crisp Tuesday morning, a meeting room across town went silent. The demo stopped. The screen froze. A Fortune 500 client watched a tool they had bet millions on fail in front of their engineers and their board. For weeks, Victor Hale had been the hero of headlines, the man who promised the future. In the next 60 seconds, everything he built would be questioned. What looked like brilliance would begin to unravel. What did he know? When did he know it? And how did so many brilliant people get pulled into a story that, at its end, would leave careers ruined and millions lost? This is the story of an architect of image, a man who learned early how to perform success, who built a company on promise more than product, and who convinced a trusting market to place real money on his act. Over the next 15 minutes, we'll trace his rise, the techniques he used, the people who sided with him, and the moment the act collapsed. We'll hear from engineers who worked nights to keep the illusion alive, from investors who confessed they saw red flags, and from documents that tell a different story than the press profiles ever did. This is a warning about charisma mistaken for competence, and the human cost when the performance ends. Victor Hale grew up in a small apartment above a corner store. His parents worked long hours. He absorbed a lesson that would guide every choice. Standing out gets you what you want. At school, he wasn't the student who loved late-night problem sets. He loved rehearsals, for speeches, for interviews, for attention. He watched every public conversation of famous founders, noting how they phrased certainty, where they held pause, how they smiled while avoiding technical detail. Those were his early textbooks. By his mid-20s, he had a collage of short stints, sales, product support, a tiny engineering contractor job here and there. He left every role with two things: a memorable anecdote to add to his resume and a list of names to call. He learned how to present competence without yet having built it. And when the tech world began worshiping the visionary founder, Victor saw a path that didn't require him to be the deepest engineer, only to sound like he was. He perfected the appearance of genius. Black turtleneck? Not required. What mattered was the cadence. He learned to answer hard questions with poetic generalities, to disarm with an anecdote, to pivot from detail to destiny. He collected buzzwords: AI, automation, end-to-end, not to explain technology, but to build a promise. When he launched his company in a hot sector, his first pitch deck read like a vision statement carved on marble. The slide titles promised scale, seamless integration, and reduction of cost by orders of magnitude. In private demos, he staged moments to impress: a canned data set here, a live demo with a human operator on standby there. He rehearsed Q&A until his answers felt inevitable. The halo effect did the rest. Early angel checks turned into seed rounds. Venture capitalists, hungry for the next category-defining company, handed him term sheets after smoky dinners and long slides. Journalists wrote glowing profiles, the young founder redefining X. Famous conference organizers invited him on stage, where he talked about ethics and revolution. But the story the world bought was the outline, the polished narrative. Back in the engineering lab, the reality looked different. Features were fragile. The system failed under diverse data. Engineers logged tickets that grew by the week. Yet every investor update featured bright metrics: customer growth, trial conversions, and upcoming breakthroughs. Inside Victor's company, the language shifted from product development to performance. Engineers were told to demo for the investor. Sales teams were coached on scripts that masked system gaps. At company all hands, Victor stood beneath stage lights and painted timelines as if they were set in stone. When real problems arose, scaling issues, security holes, inconsistent outputs, the response was never to slow down. The response was to hide, to patch visibly, to push the narrative forward. A small team volunteered to create demo mode workarounds, human-run processes disguised by code. Dashboards were adjusted to highlight the metrics that look best in investor presentations. Some employees rationalized it, others grew uneasy. They were given a choice: join the performance or be labeled a naysayer. The tipping point came during a high-stakes rollout for a major client. On paper, everything had been rehearsed. In person, the software met real-world complexity it hadn't encountered. On stage, the product produced errors it had never made in rehearsals because rehearsals had been controlled. The client system failed to reconcile critical data. Panic rippled through the operations room. In the weeks that followed, a former engineer, unable to reconcile their conscience with the performance, copied logs and emails. Those documents found their way to a journalist. The first public report landed in the press like a splinter, thin at first, then widening with every new source. Investigative reporting revealed a pattern: manipulated demos, inflated metrics, and internal memos that contradicted public promises. Investors scrambled. Some demanded audits. Regulators opened inquiries. Subpoenas followed. The stock, or valuation, took a hit overnight. Within the company, executives resigned rather than defend the messaging. Employees who had once been proud now felt complicit in a story that had real victims. Clients whose operations had been disrupted, early employees whose equity dissolved, and the public trust that had been deployed on Victor's claims. In the weeks after, the numbers were brutal. Jobs were lost, savings evaporated. The industry learned a lesson that was painfully costly. Performance without substance becomes a systemic risk when money and lives depend on the promise. Victor's image, once luminous, shifted into a cautionary tale some would call an ethical collapse. Others saw a failure of due diligence. Both were true. This story is not just about one man. It's about a market that rewarded spectacle, a culture that mistook confidence for competence, and the people who paid the price. If this moved you, do this now. Like the video, hit subscribe, and click the bell, because we will follow the documents, the court filings, and the people who risk everything to speak the truth. Share this with someone who invests, hires, or builds. And if you know a story like this, send us evidence. We will dig. We will hold elected regulators, investors, and leaders to account. Don't let performance replace product. Don't let image replace integrity. Be part of the conversation now.